Clap. It's the same credit scene because, you know, it's Pixel Remaster. Yep. Alright, I guess it's time for the good old let me talk about the game because I got stuff to say about the game. The thoughts on the game moment. Plop. Alright. So, Final Fantasy 2. Not a bad game, but not the best game. By far, the only thing that gets me going with this game is like how the world like changed. Like, oh, the Emperor comes, destroy all the town. There's 2 towns that fully destroyed where you can't even go to them anymore because they're destroyed. And the world, I loved it. Like, the world building was great. The characters were very bland, basic, but no, it worked for it. I'm sure it's like the same dialogue and sort of like that it was back in the days on the NES, which, as I've heard, did some research. Apparently, Final Fantasy 2 came 1 year after Final Fantasy 1. So like, for the story to have changed so much and like being so much a story, and for it to being so much in the present, I think like that's amazing. From 1 to 2, it says amazing storytelling. I think, you know, not me. Like, it's not the best amazing. Okay, for today's standard, this is a very boring story, but it's still at the moment. I still very enjoy the story, as today. I also see some weird stuff here and there, but I think it went fine. I enjoyed the word learning and stuff because if I have a question, I could just go back to the Princess Hilda or the other guy, I forgot his name already, to like ask him like, here's the word I found, where did I find this? And I'll tell like, go with this person or go there and you'll find more information to what you need to do. It's like, yeah. It was a bit like annoying to go back all the time, and I thought it was great to have like somewhere to go to ask a question that you've learned, a word, to go continue your story. In a way, I liked it, personally, because also by going back you fight more monsters who get stronger. Which, talking about gameplay, again, world building, the world, the characters are very bland and boring, but it did its job, and I think it did a great job. There was no like overcomplicated like time loop or like old civilization, which it still was amazing for Fantasy 1, but Fantasy 2 was more like grounded. There was more deaths. It was more like there was war against the Empire, which I guess this game created the Empire. There's so much stuff that this game did for the first time. The Behemoth, the Empire, Sid. I've heard there's Chocobo in this game. I did not find a Chocobo. I thought it was part of the story. I guess not. I guess Chocobo always has been like side content, so I missed the Chocobo, I guess. Sad. But yeah, if we talk like the enjoyment to play Final Fantasy 2 will be to just experience the world, but the gameplay of Final Fantasy 2, like the gameplay is not the worst. Like the way they do their stat and everything, it's not horrible. I didn't hate it because it made me want to actually fight some fights that even though it will be hard, I'll do them because I get more stats. More stats mean I just get strong in general. I didn't hate it. I think it worked pretty okay. The only issue I have with the battle system, it's just how boring it can get, or how heavy grind it can be, because obviously at the end of the game I focus more on the specific stuff, but like throughout the whole game I never use spell. So now it was the point where like, I should use spells and stuff like buff and stuff for bosses, since now I had them. It was like, well, they're level 1, I have to grind to get my spell to a decent level. And if I want to continue like in the game, which is what I was doing, well, the level 1 they won't help, and I was just main attack, mainly doing my basic attack to just do more damage. It's like when I got the Flare, Holy, and Ultimate spell, like, heck yeah, I got some amazing spell, but they're level 1, and the battle is 16. It's like, gosh dang. The only, like, as you could see during my whole way to Pandemonium and the Jade Passage, I only use Osmos and Cure, and the buffer that I distribute between each character to do like a 2-turn triple buff, like out buff on my character in 1 turn. Which, now that I realize I could just have one character do 1 buff over and over and over. But yeah, like, it's like, I found the game very boring, because throughout the whole game, except the ending, like the like three last dungeon, the whole game, all enemy will do like either like too much damage, so you have like, you know, oh, you're in the wrong zone, or they do like okay damage, and then you can just one shot them sometimes. It was very boring. Then at the end game, the enemy were very interesting. Like most of the time, the enemy will survive one hit. Some of them, not all of them. Very few of them survive one hit. But like the Dead Rider were like an actual threat when you fight them. There's the Curl, which was a huge threat because if they touch you, you die. The Memorable was a huge threat because if they touch you, you get, you know, the bad breath status where you get every single bad status. So yeah, I love the last dungeon because the last dungeon was the best dungeon. Oh yeah, the main reason why this game is very boring and not fun to play is that most of your time will be in dungeons. Like the only time you're not in dungeon is when you're going to another dungeon. Pretty much. It's like the transaction between the dungeon in this game. Every single dungeon in this game, except Pandemonium, are horrible. And I hate every single one of the dungeons. Why? Because they're all the exact same thing. They all have the square shape and you make you go to the whole square to go to the next room. Or they have multiple ways, you have to go all the way up and all the way back down and just for multiple ways. And most of them not, the reward you get from going out of your way is useless. You get like a potion or something. The reward is more the experience you gain on stats by fighting than anything else. The chests, worthless. The only, like what I was saying, Pandemonium, which is the very last dungeon of this game that we just did, is the best dungeon in this game because there's actual layouts, there's secret passage, which are not hard to find. I found like as soon as they know or found out that they exist, I found like a lot of them that make me go way faster through the dungeon. And I love that every chest almost had a like, small mini boss. They all had amazing equipment to go with, which again makes sense because there's the last dungeon. But it's like, I wish there was just if the whole game was like Pandemonium Dungeon, not like as long or big, but like had more like far away chests with like a mini boss and you have to defeat it. The mini boss being actually strong, and you get like an actually like very good like unique weapon that would be like so much better than just like, oh, I kill an basic enemy and that's it. About bosses, so I talk about stats, which I think is fine. I talk about the dungeon, which are horrible, and I talk about other stuff. I want to talk about the bosses because I think they're not a big part of this game, but there's obviously a bit more to do to the chest. Again, Pandemonium I think is the climax of this game. It is the best part of this game. I actually had a lot of fun going to Pandemonium. I loved it. I love Pandemonium. Great place. The dungeon design, great. When they showed 4-door, God, I was like, there's no way they did again empty rooms with door. They did not do the empty rooms. They did different pathways, which were again very long. But if you found the secret passage, which I discovered them at some point, was like, it's so much faster. It's amazing. If there was a hint that there was holes in the walls in Pandemonium, that would have been better. That would be like, that will cut back the game to be like better. Because Pandemonium is actually a very good dungeon. Better than Final Fantasy 1 Chaos Shrine for sure. Because Chaos Shrine is just reusing like the bosses, the fiends, and then the final boss Chaos. Chaos being pretty tough actually. Gosh, these ending bosses are really hard. Anyway, the bosses. Oh wait, I want to go back to dungeon gameplay. Dungeon sucks in this game, right? I said that already. But the doors, they use the empty doors so often in every dungeon. Like every dungeon has a floor where it's like, here's many doors, choose. That's it. That's the whole dungeon. That's the whole floor. It's like, why? It's so dumb. It's so like, it's just wasting my step. It's just here to waste my endurance, to waste my potions. That's it. But like at some point, you fight so much, you have so much money, you just have max potion that every time you go in a new dungeon. At least I did. Or like or if you get the hint earlier than me, like use Osmos, use the spell, use your cure, you're good, you're fine. You're just wasting time at this point, literally. Yeah, I hate the doors. Anyway, the bosses. I want to talk about the bosses because most bosses were really like, I don't talk about all the bosses normally, but the bosses were all great because they were like a challenge. I say, but they were not. Most bosses were like just a normal enemy that you like fight earlier than what you will fight in with when it's a normal enemy, which I think is kind of, that's the thing I hate about this game. The end. I hate that. But the main thing that bothered me is that, for example, I did the tropical island earlier than I should by accident. Again, I just explored and I found it, so I did it. And the boss at the end was just 4 wild horn. And then by going back to the castle, I just fought a wild horn on my way back to the castle. It's like, what? And then the other dungeon after that, like the life spring for the dragon egg, that was just a it was a basic chimera that you fight in the desert before going to the Colosseum. You can find those really early. Like, so many bosses during that time span. Like, the early game, the bosses are actually like actual bosses, or they're just like very strong enemy, which makes them like, you know, an Imperial Guard, which is strong. It's other like beasts that you find for the first time is very strong. Like, I can forgive the early game to be not like too original bosses, but at the mid game, come on. I'm going to a Colosseum. There's a behemoth. Alright, it's cool. I'm going to the life spring with a dragon wall. It's a chimera that's floating me there. Why not like a plant, a carnivorous plant with poison weighing me down a cave? No, it's a chimera that you find in the desert. It was in the forest. Like, what? I'm going to a tropical island. I took the rhino. Makes sense. Yeah, they're also on the continent next to the castle. You should go a bit south. That's it. There was nothing special. Those are the two I remember. But I remember other bosses that were just the basic enemies. It's like at some, like when I fought the chimera, I was like, oh, it's just a chimera, just auto battle. The end. That's it. There was nothing special about it. There was so many things that were like, was interesting. It was so many bosses took like 3 to 4 turns to kill. Like my first one was my first one was too buff, and then I do like, you know, the new member do some damage, and then when I go to attack, oh, he's dead. Like, did I even need to buff? No, at all. It was useless. The guy was just so basic and boring. Give more hit point or something. It's a boss. I'm sad. I'm very sad. I'm very, like, I want to like this game because I think the surrounding is great, but playing it, it's just so boring and unfun. The Emperor again, but the last dungeon was so good. The last dungeon was super good, and the final boss was insanely hard. I had to stack those buffs, and thank God I farmed on my Osmos during the whole way. Thank God. But yeah. I would also like to say that the mini bosses, they're very strong enemy for each chest with special items or rare items. I think that was a great idea. Like, you could say like, oh, what about like the blue dragon you find in the chest in Tropical Island? That was like a normal enemy in the tower, like Jade Passage or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but Jade Passage is literally the last, like the before last dungeon of the game, and you find the dragon way before the end of the game. He's pretty tough for at this point of the game. It's pretty freaking hard. It counts as a mini boss for a chess. You know, it's a chess boss. I forgive the chess boss being normal enemies because they're just chess. They're not like a natural like dungeon boss. It's different. It's different. It's different. I forgive those. I think the chess boss, mini boss, they were amazing. They were a great idea. I just wish the item were just better. Like a one unique, very rare item for some of them. That's just what I wish. Some were just basic items. Some were just items that I kept getting as drops from normal enemies. Which, by the way, I think is a great that enemy drops items and like weapon, because I don't think in Final Fantasy 1 they did that. You had to buy everything or find in chests. There was no like enemy drops. I loved in that game introduced the enemy drops, which is like, yeah. There's a lot of things I like. The whole, like my adventure to Final Fantasy 2. If I had to do like a short resume, my adventure to Final Fantasy 2 was very boring. And I wish to never do it again. But I'm not saying the game is bad. I mean, the game is bad. Yes, it's a bad game. Don't play Final Fantasy 2. But I cannot deny that Final Fantasy 2 introduced so much new stuff that it is like, I can understand wanting to go and try it out. It's like, even though I'm telling you, yeah, Final Fantasy is a bad game, but it introduced so much stuff. If you love old school stuff, try it out. Like, it's not a waste of time. I mean, it kind of is, but in a way, it's like I got to see like so much first stuff I introduced. I like Final Fantasy introduced the Empire, which we now see like almost we see the Empire as evil in so many Final Fantasy games. It's insane. Empire is in Final Fantasy 14. That's like the main villain. The behemoths are there for the Dragoon, the Dark Knight. They were mentioned. They were not played as, but they were mentioned as like character. They didn't have anything special, but the idea of a Dragoon, a Dragon Knight, was introduced in this. The dragons been friends. No, that wasn't Bahamut. Never mind. The Dark Knight. Even though we saw nothing of a Dark Knight, there was the idea of a Dark Knight. The undead taking damage from healing. This was introduced in Final Fantasy 2. It's amazing. They even told you if you heal an undead, you'll get hurt. If you suck MP or HP from an undead, you'll get hurt. And so like that, there's like the undead flag, which in Final Fantasy 1 was just like, oh, you can use Dia, they'll do big damage. That's it. In this, you could use like, oh, they're undead, you can heal them, that will hurt them. That's great. There's Leviathan that was quote unquote introduced for the first time, but I think was more seen as like, oh, here's a huge, it's a huge sea snake monster, the sea, like the legends, because this game had a lot of like Christian religions, like devil, heaven, the devil. They use a lot of it, stuff here and there, which is fine. I don't think there's more of it in the old Final Fantasy game. Yeah, I guess also apparently like Sid was introduced in this game. As I heard, chocobos are in Final Fantasy 2. I have not found a chocobo in this game, but apparently they are in here somewhere. I'm just not the best at exploring. I'm sorry. What else? There was more stuff introduced. Like I really hope the item drop from Monster is still a thing, because I think it's a good idea. That enemy can drop like unique weapons, or like weapon you can get more early than you can normally get. So if you want, you could farm from them if you wish. If you want to be like on a power strength, I like that. I wish like the only change in my eyes to make Final Fantasy 2 a good game, the only change it needs, really, the only change this game needs to be a good game is just better dungeons. Because, like I said, almost 80% of your game is just in dungeons, and they're all the exact same, except the final one, which is Pandemonium, which, well, again, I will say, is the best dungeon. It's actually an amazing dungeon. I will redo that dungeon if I can, or if I want, because it just was such a fun dungeon. It was actually great to play. So yeah, if I have to put my new Final Fantasy 2 in my ranking of Final Fantasy game, as I always do at the end of these, Final Fantasy 9 will still be my best Final Fantasy game. So from top to bottom, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 1 Pixel Remaster. Specifically, when I say Final Fantasy 1 to 6, I'll say in the Pixel Remaster, because they're so great, and that's the only version I play now. So Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 1, 3 is 12, 10, 10-2, 8, 7, 2, and 15. I think a lot of them. Again, I do not count Final Fantasy 14 because that's just an MMO and I just play that game every day of my life and all the time, and please save me, my wallet's dying. And yeah. That's it.